That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, y'all know today was supposed to be a Patreon podcast only, but I feel like I have to get this video out. Tomorrow I'll do a Patreon only show. So of course, if you want to support the channel and you want to go over there and get extra shows, Patreon is the place to do it. The link will be in the description. But the reason I felt like I needed to do this video is I sent out a couple tweets yesterday and saw that people really have not changed their mind. People are still not willing to learn the lesson and move on. And that's what we have to talk about today. We have to talk about why Dynasty Leagues are still easy to win. And I know I brought this up on, maybe I tweeted it, I'm not sure. But I said the reason I don't play DFS, the reason I don't play high stakes season log fantasy, at least at this point, is because I feel like I'm not good enough to. I don't think my ROI will necessarily be near the top where I want it to be. And in Dynasty Leagues, it's sad to say, but Dynasty Leagues are kind of easy to win. I mean, if you go out there and you really just kind of basically understand what you're doing and you aren't too emotional, you're able to make plus EV moves continuously and stack value. And I don't think there's an easier format to win. I mean, obviously it's going to be extremely difficult winning in sports betting. Nobody can really do that. Obviously, if you're playing DFS, there's only like 1% of the field that takes home 90% of the winnings. So there are these really bad contests for that just gear towards the very elite players who have spreadsheets and who have algorithms. But with Dynasty, it's easy. I mean, you can go in there and with some basic understandings, you can be a winning player. And now we're going to talk about two things that I've noticed that people really are not willing to give up on. I mean, it's mainly one trend, but the thing is we can understand it best with two players. And now this is going to be Dynasty players just think they know too much. I mean, they think that they can go out there and watch a 20-minute highlight clip of a player on YouTube and say, you know what? This guy has what it takes to be successful in the NFL. You know what? This guy doesn't have what it takes. I mean, I don't believe this guy. I'm not going to draft him on my team just because they watch some film. Just because, say even you watch 5 hours of film. Well, I can tell you right now, all these NFL scouting departments, all these NFL front offices, they are putting that in 10 times, and they are putting that in with a scouting department of 10, 15 people. They're talking to the players, they're talking to the head coaches. They have infinitely more data points than you do. So there's no reason that we think we should be able to be better talent evaluators than the NFL. But what we can do as Dynasty players and how we can get an advantage is we don't necessarily go out there and try to evaluate talent. We try to listen to what NFL teams are telling us. We're trying to look at situations. We're trying to look at player profiles because obviously no player is going to strongly, 1-for-1 correlate fantasy points with NFL team investment just because you have to understand the profile of the player and how they are going to be producing on the football field and if that translates to fantasy points. I mean, the classic example is a field stretching wide receiver is going to be a lot more valuable for his NFL team than he will be for our fantasy team. And kind of the inverse is true with a slot wide receiver, where the slot wide receiver is going to be a lot more valuable for our fantasy team than the NFL team. But we can make adjustments like that. We understand. I mean, at least if you listen to this channel, that's what I mainly talk about. I mainly talk about when we look for running backs, what we want to see is we want to see athleticism. We want to see a situation. We want to see team investment. And we want to see the ability to catch the ball. And outside of that, I mean, I can't really think of too many things that we really are looking for. I think people who sit there and they watch a running back play 20 college football games and say, you know what? Yeah, I really have a feeling deep down in my gut that this guy is going to be great. I mean, guys, it's so arrogant to say that. I know it's very demoralizing for me to come on here and tell you that you probably aren't better than NFL teams at watching that film. I mean, they even just have so many more camera angles than you, just simple things that they are able to go out there and that we don't have access to. And it's not necessarily your fault. Maybe if you have every resource on your hands like these NFL front offices do, then yeah, maybe you could be just as successful, if not more. But the fact is we don't. We can't go and interview these players. We can't go interview coaches. We can't go out there and see these guys in drills. So I'm going to talk about two guys that the Dynasty community is really just closing their eyes, drowning out the background noise and ignoring every sign that the team is giving us and going out there and drafting these guys way too high. And it's kind of embarrassing, especially if you go look at some of the replies to my tweets yesterday. I mean, they're interesting. But first guy, Derrius Guice. I mean, he is the poster boy for this. So Derrius Guice, I'm going to say this right away. He may be a fantastic running back. In college, you could make the argument that he was the best pure rusher in the entire draft class. Obviously, I'm here not trying to make that argument, but nonetheless, I can understand you. You want to say that. I am completely fine with it. Derrius Guice checks a lot of boxes. I mean, he's fast. I mean, he's athletic. He has the size. And at first, he had draft capital. But a lot has changed since he came into the NFL, and his value has tanked because of it. But some people are just so excited about Derrius Guice and refuse to give him up, where his value has not gone down to where it should be. Now let's talk about what's happened to Derrius Guice since he was drafted. And I mean, it's just been all bad news. One, he had an ACL tear his rookie season. Now he comes back his sophomore season after having complications with that ACL tear surgery, which obviously this is no fault of Derrius Guice. This is just a random occurrence, but it happened. And then we see that he has a meniscus tear in 2019. And then he finally gets back from that meniscus tear and sprains his MCL. So Derrius Guice, when he came into the NFL, we knew he fell in the draft for an unknown reason. Most people said it was due to character concerns. I did not believe that. I thought it was always due to the injuries, and we see that he gets to the NFL level, and the injuries continue to plague him. And I'm completely fine. Someone coming to me and say, Mason, you know what? Injuries are really random. I mean, if you look at the aggregate with the statistics, injury prone is not a thing. Guys, a completely fair argument to make. I'm not even going to really sit here and fight you tooth and nail on that. You can make that argument, but we have to understand what the Washington Redskins are doing. We have to understand that the Washington Redskins have a medical staff who can go out there and they can evaluate Derrius Guice a lot more than we can based on some agility drills and how big his hamstring looks on Twitter. It's kind of, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this. I mean, it's kind of pretty bad. But we see that with all of their information, with their investment into Derrius Guice, they go out there. Since they've drafted Derrius Guice, they've signed 4 running backs. And no, by no means am I saying any of these 4 running backs are more talented than Derrius Guice. That's not the argument I'm making here. The argument I'm making here is the Washington Redskins understand what's going on. They understand who Derrius Guice is, and this is their actions. We have to understand that they know more than we do, and we have to look at their actions and see what they are telling us, because teams can lie in press conferences. Teams cannot lie in their actions. And they go out there, they sign 4 running backs, and they draft 2 running backs just 2 years after drafting Derrius Guice in the second round. So they bring in 6 total running backs in a span of 2 years after drafting Derrius Guice. And not only did that happen, but they bring in a new head coach and a new general manager. So Derrius Guice has no team loyalty whatsoever from this new coaching staff, and nobody on the team is really tied to him. The only people that are tied to him are dynasty players who loved Derrius Guice coming into the NFL for great reason. Derrius Guice was a very exciting running back, and Washington Redskins fans who really desperately want Derrius Guice to succeed, as do I. But the fact is, Antonio Gibson is a guy that I know most people are saying, but Mason, Antonio Gibson has 30 career carries in college. But what did I say at the beginning of the video? The only thing we really care about for these running backs, because playing running back in the NFL, you don't really have to know a lot about the position. You really just have to check a couple boxes and then you're golden. I mean, we see success with Ty Montgomery. We see success with Alvin Kamara, who didn't have a large workload coming into the NFL. And Antonio Gibson has every single trait. I always talk about wide receiver. It's important to have production. Running back, it's important to have traits. And Antonio Gibson comes in. He has every single trait. And the main thing, I'm not even going to sit here and argue about talent with Antonio Gibson and Derrius Guice, because who am I to say who's more talented? But what I do know is the new head coach and the new general manager went out there. They signed 2 running backs this offseason. Then they went and realized Antonio Gibson was the best value on the board in the early 3rd round with the 66th pick, and they go out there and take Antonio Gibson. So they bring in 3 running backs while they have Derrius Guice on the roster, and we're not going to listen to them and maybe think, maybe Derrius Guice, the guy who's played 5 games in the past 2 seasons, is not a locked and loaded dynasty asset like we may think. I mean, maybe he's not even projected to be the starter on this Washington Redskins team halfway through the 2020 season. But nonetheless, let's talk about one other player that fits this prototype, and this is another exciting guy, and I've actually talked about this on the channel multiple times. Y'all probably annoyed of me flexing about this, but I mean, I've FaceTimed this guy. I mean, I know people who know Aaron Jones. And the problem with Aaron Jones is, yeah, he's a fantastic running back. Just like Derrius Guice has all the talent in the world, but he's on the last year of his rookie deal, we know that once a running back is off their rookie deal, their value will never go up. And Aaron Jones is coming to the end of it. We don't even hear talks about extensions. What instead the Packers go out there and do is they draft A.J. Dillon with the 62nd pick in the NFL draft. I mean, this is 7 picks after J.K. Dobbins. So sent out a tweet earlier today saying that Aaron Jones is kind of in the same boat as Kerryon Johnson, Mark Ingram. And yeah, you can make the argument that Aaron Jones is way more talented than those running backs, and that's a completely fair argument to make. But I'm here saying that with the way we play Dynasty should not necessarily be about what we believe players' talents are. And I know I sound like an idiot saying that, but we have to look at what the NFL teams are telling us, and we have to react due to that. So they take A.J. Dillon with the 62nd pick. And I know you watched a bunch of games on A.J. Dillon, and you're thinking A.J. Dillon's not going to be a success in the NFL. But here are some real statistics of running backs that were drafted at this spot or higher in the past 5 years. Just keep in mind, these are all of the running backs. Maybe get down a little piece of paper. Maybe I'll post this list to Patreon because it's hard to follow. But Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Darius Geis, Kerryon Johnson, Ronald Jones, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Rashad Penny, Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, out of this list, we've seen 3 major busts. So I'm not sitting here saying that A.J. Dillon's a locked and loaded stud fantasy running back because he doesn't catch passes. But what I am saying is A.J. Dillon is going to be a significant part of the Green Bay Packers game plan, not only in 2020, but going forward. And I'm not necessarily saying that A.J. Dillon's a massive value in fantasy right now. He is a value, but we have to understand, like I said at the beginning of the video, what we can actually do instead of trying to evaluate talent is we can go out there and we can try to profile these running backs. And A.J. Dillon profiles as a guy that's not going to catch passes, so I'm not necessarily running out there and drafting A.J. Dillon as much as I can, even though I do have him on some teams, but I am looking at him and realizing, hey, I mean, this guy's probably going to get goal line work. This guy's probably going to get a significant amount of carries, and Aaron Jones is going to be put in the committee. So why are we acting like a committee running back who's on the last year of his rookie deal just because he scored a lot of touchdowns in 2019 and just because he's a really fun guy to root for is a locked and loaded dynasty asset? Now, let's talk about the implications behind this. I mean, Darius Geis, I think the outlook on him is a lot more bleak than Aaron Jones because Darius Geis has no receiving capability in this offense. Because if you want to make the argument that Antonio Gibson is a pumped up Chris Thompson, completely fair argument to make, and keep in mind, I'm going to sit here and say, well, yeah, that means Darius Geis has no upside. I mean, is that what we're saying? Darius Geis is a 2-down running back at best on a league bottom offense who is dealing with significant injuries in his entire career. So even if he goes out there and has an RB2 season, which I think a lot of people can project him to do, I mean, his dynasty value isn't going to increase. I mean, people are still going to have those injuries in the back of their minds. He's still never going to be able to be a passing game running back. So where's the upside with Darius Geis? There is none. And it's sad to say because he's such a fun guy to root for. But I mean, these are guys I would rather have over Darius Geis in dynasty. I'd rather have David Montgomery easily. I would rather have all the guys that profile to be a significant producer in 2020, but not beyond, like James Conner, Chris Carson, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson. I'd rather have all those guys than Darius Geis because I believe that they're going to produce more than Darius Geis in 2020. And I don't really think that Darius Geis is going to be a long-term asset by any means. So I'm looking at all of these running backs as short-term assets. And I'd rather have the guy who I think is going to produce more in 2020 than Darius Geis. And I'd rather have some of the rookies. I'd rather have A.J. Dillon, who I just referenced, and saying that he doesn't necessarily have a ton of upside because he lacks receiving game ability. But at least maybe we can paint a picture where Aaron Jones is gone after this year, and A.J. Dillon has a significant workload in one of the league's above average offenses. So I'd rather have A.J. Dillon. I mean, he's going in the rookie year of his rookie contract. And I'd rather have Antonio Gibson, for all the reasons I just mentioned. I mean, Antonio Gibson, I think, should project to have a similar amount of fantasy points than Darius Geis in 2020. And I know that's crazy to say because maybe you look at Antonio Gibson and you say he's just going to catch passes. But what we have to understand about fantasy football is catching passes means everything. Fantasy football, I mean, you get a reception, you're getting at least 1 point. You're getting a lot more yards than if you carried the ball. And if you get a rush, I mean, if you give Darius Geis a 4-yard rush, I mean, he's getting 0.4 points. I mean, are we really getting too excited about that? Now, Aaron Jones, I think the upside with him is a lot higher. We've already seen it in 2019. And the great news about Aaron Jones is he can be successful in a committee because he was in a committee last year with Jamal Williams. So I don't think the short-term immediate production from Aaron Jones is too likely to fall off just because we know he can be so efficient and we know that he's going to be getting the receiving game work, which is the productive part of fantasy football. So Aaron Jones, the outlook on him is a lot more certain in 2020 than Darius Guice, and this is reflected in their dynasty prices. But the thing with Aaron Jones is you have to view him as a short-term asset. Sad to say, and that's really what the video is about. I mean, guys, this wasn't necessarily fun to make. I mean, I own Darius Guice in a league. I owned Aaron Jones. Actually, I traded all of my Aaron Jones this offseason. I don't own him anymore. But nonetheless, I mean, these guys are fun guys to root for, but we should not let that cloud our judgment. We should not really bake that into our dynasty values just because we want to see a guy succeed. I mean, maybe you can make the argument that I just play fantasy for fun. I just want to go out there and root for my guys. And yeah, by all means, go out there and draft Darius Guice and Aaron Jones. They're fun to watch. But if we're playing to win, I don't necessarily think that we should be attacking dynasty in that fashion. Now, I know this was a longer video than I expected, but I really got on some tangents, and I hope this was helpful in the slightest. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down there and make sure you subscribe. Have a great day, guys.